Hey, everybody, and welcome back to YAFTV. It is Wednesday, February 8th. Always so glad to be back with you here on the channel. Thanks for watching. And we have a great show for you today. I am back here with Douglas Gabriel, who I'll bring in a moment. We're going to be talking about what I've been covering my last couple of videos to do with artificial intelligence and the Antichrist, and the use of the AI system to bring about this Antichrist beast system in the very actual sense. And so I'll bring in Douglas now, and we'll get into sort of the nitty gritties of this and talk about quantum entanglement, how there is the attempt to capture humans into a digital-based beast matrix to create this Antichrist system. So I'll bring Douglas in, and we'll go from there, and I'll introduce you when you're here, Douglas. Welcome back, Douglas.
Hi, how are you doing, Free?
I'm good. I'm good. And just a reminder to all of you who getting to know him pretty well here on the channel, Douglas Gabriel is an educator. He has several advanced degrees. He was a signal intelligence analyst in the NSA, and then became a Trappist monk, and then became a Jesuit priest, and then went into layperson life and has become an educator ever since. Very, very much involved in Waldorf schools nationwide, and I think we'll leave it there. And a huge spiritual thinker. Very, it does great, important work. You can read his stuff on OurSpirit.com and at Gabriel's_horn on Gab, and I will be bannering those underneath as we go here. And so welcome, Douglas.
Well, thank you so much, Free. And I'm also the father of 4 children, which is really the biggest job I've done. But I heard your talk the other day, and I was so impressed by it, the way that you framed it, the way that you use words, really. You have just a great sense of being able to put things into imagistic language that people can then understand. So when you started talking about AI and basically the Antichrist and, what is this? That was coincident with Tyla, my beautiful wife, who had got quite worked up because of Chat GPT. And, I was trying to ignore it. I like to ignore evil as much as I can. But anyway, it came out and I said, no, this can't be true. Is this what my son told me about a few months ago? A thing called Doll-E, where you can simply put in some words and it'll make a graphic image of anything. It'll give you 1,000 versions of it. You can tweak it. No, I want the angel to have bigger wings or whatever. You can draw any image you want, and then you can now create anything. You can write any term paper you want right now. All you have to do is take the syllabus or take the description of the assignment, plug it in as prompts, and through reinforcement learning, a thing called application programming interface is now the secret that runs Chat GPT. Now, Chat GPT, because of it, it's already putting thousands of people out of work. Now, we know that anytime there's a robotic anything, and call it artificial intelligence or call it whatever you want. I don't believe in artificial intelligence. I believe that it's an AI, artificial I am. It's a machine copy of human intelligence. Because what it does is it coagulates the collective work of millions of programmers and puts it into applications. And now, because of ADI, the computer itself, through your prompts, which is called, it's self-trained, or then later it's just simply self-reinforced. It's a type of learning. It's a type of machine learning. And I've said from the beginning, there is no such thing as an artificial intelligence as described by the visionary technolords. But there are lots of subroutines, and now there's a subroutine, ADI, which can then take your prompts and write a paper for you, basically from, and this is why they confuse everybody, because these are all lies, by the way. So immediately when I was told this, I said, no, not possible. It's all the parameters of the database that you're doing your data mining from. So Chat GPT was taken from, I think, BitChute or some strange site where they took these millions of entries. And so basically it's giving you whatever it is the limitation of the database they're drawing it from. And it will simply be Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Mark my words.
Oh,
It will
people
do
have
what you
already
do.
experimented with many things that they wouldn't do. Things about Trump. Give me a positive story about Trump. Oh, sorry, I can't do that. Like various things that people have tried to prompt it. These prompt engineers is a new job apparently, and it won't, because, like you said, it's a cage. It's a cage for what our parameters of our brain are supposed to be, what our thoughts are supposed to focus on, just like all of the censorship, everything else. But it literally is an AI, matrix thought system where it will only do, as you said, as it's been programmed to do, with an agenda. And that agenda is dark, and it's to fragment the human mind as much as possible, and to fill it, of course, with awful images and propaganda. And I saw a piece by Joebot .xyz. Joe Allen, I think, is his name, but Joebot, he calls himself. And he brought up a piece where this chat GPT had done basically somebody had said, oh, do some images of a new Cronenberg film. And Cronenberg, it's just really grotesque, futuristic, hellscape images in his movies. And of course, it was able to do that no problem, and came up with, just exactly, Cronenberg style, art. And so this is the kind of thing. What it's allowed to do is everything that will advance its own cause, and to teach itself to keep perpetuating the cage that can only grow, is that really ugly cage with the propaganda, and of course the very satanic propagandas, which is we're going to lean towards here in this video, to kind of jump into the Antichrist issue, and scripturally and biblically what the Antichrist was about, what the Antichrist was allowed to do. And what I was saying in my last videos is this issue of the timeline division, and this creation of a twin digital earth, but really it's a twin digital consciousness that they're sucking us into, which ChatGPT is advanced to them. It's advanced in a way, but it's still primitive compared to what's really going on within our cells and within our minds as a result of it. So now I'm starting to ramble, so I'm going to let you jump in here.
Yes, there's no such thing as a machine having intelligence. It has machine intelligence. We program it to have that intelligence. And so what we're seeing here, as you talked about with the twin world, that's been going on for, well over 20 years. It's a program called Sentient World Simulation. And we've discussed this a lot. It's Eric Schmidt's new, what is called your dark profile. It's everything about you. They have you in a simulation. Every single person that goes online, they create a simulation so that they can control you. They want to know what you want to buy, what you desire. If you're into porno, gambling, anything, they can leverage you. They want to know if you went on the dark web, anything they can. But of course, this is just one more component of what this world of electromagnetism has provided for us. And that's something we'll get into in a second. But I do want to mention that generative pre-trained transformers, that's what GPT stands for. And it's the third level of it. And the fourth level is coming out in a minute. And so they're now calling this AI, we call it AI Borg, or AI Ahriman, or AI Materialism, or AI whatever, but they're calling it AI Google, Chat GPT. So all the big names have their own version of this. But now, look, it already was put into your life, whether you liked it or not. And it's really just a big pack of lies, and it's an illusion, and it's a delusion, and it's trying to steal your will, like all robots do. All robots try to put you out of existence. That's their job. So, when you go to if you have a Gmail and they give you choices of words, and you notice that they change as you're writing your letter to somebody, you're writing a note to somebody, and your choices change. And of course, they do the spell check, correct? They do the semantic correction. They do the syntax correction. They do that. So you don't get to have any freedom anymore. And as a matter of fact, you may send out text messages all the time that have words that have self-corrected, that are words you don't even know what they are. And it can completely mess up your entire communication. Why? Because it's a machine. It is not ever going to be a sentient being, but it certainly will be a memory capacity device for the incarnation of who we could call Mr. Materialism. Mr. Materialism, who we call Ahriman in anthroposophy and spiritual science, since 1840, materialism, through the aegis of what the apocalypse calls the image. The image is science. So materialism is ruled by infallible science, which changes every day, but it's infallible. It's settled science, and you can't tell me one single settled theory that was settled for more than 100 years. You can't tell me that it's anything more than superstition, and you certainly can't tell me that it isn't godless, atheistic, and indeed anti-human, because that is what science is, and that is what the ten-headed dragon or beast with the the seven-headed with the 10-crowned dragon or beast that came out of both the endless pit and the ocean. That's materialism. And materialism is one of the most evil things that's ever been created on the earth, because it kills us to the ability to have spiritual perceptions. And as predicted, the scorpions in the apocalypse that have a tail with a needle on it that sting you, that have the face of a locust because they're not human. Hello? Those are doctors. Okay, that's the pharmaceutical war against our bloodstream. And how many times does the apocalypse refer to the blood and the blood burning, the blood this and the poison in the blood and the blood and blood, blood, blood? Well, the deal is really that, yes, there is a being who intends to incarnate into what we call the spider web network. And Steiner coined these terms, so he called it the spider web network of shadow gray thinking. In other words, materialistic thinking, atheistic thinking, thinking that is not imaginative, thinking that does not connect you to higher hierarchical beings, but through your digital devices connect you to demonic, subnatural, man-made virtual realms. And what does this do to you? Well, we use it as a convenience, but each and every single time that you use it, that you are not conscious, you give up of your thinking, your feeling, and your willing. In other words, your deeds. It literally takes the place of what should be coming in as the gifts of angels, archangels, and archai, time beings. That's what's supposed to be coming in. But no, what do we have? We have the fake omniscience of your computer. In other words, we have the internet, and you can Google or DuckDuckGo, you can do a query and you will know everything. You can contact the whole world, so you're omnipresent. Your friend in wherever, you can talk to them as if they're in the room with you. And you have so much power, you think you're omnipotent, because with your phone, you can destroy lives. We've seen that. People can cause others to commit suicide or certainly go into depression. You can set a bomb off in another city, jillions of miles away. That little device, here I have one. I have a little black box that has a demon in it, a little gremlin in it, right? This little box makes you think luciferically, pridefully, that you're omniscient, because you can give any teacher in any college classroom a hard time by simply looking up what they just said and proving them wrong, right? Oh, that's power. Or I can, as I'm in the classroom, I can communicate with my girlfriend who happens to be in New Zealand right now. And it's like she's right there with me. Or with this, I can buy and sell on the stock market. I can do anything with this if I have an application. And now, imagine every single application made for this phone that you can get. Imagine them all connected. And imagine that you can give them a prompt. And no matter what application you need, it rushes in and replicates the human thinking that has been put into that application by human beings. Don't forget that. None of this is machine generated yet. So technically, there is still no artificial intelligence, because machine intelligence is not intelligent, as we've seen. Oh, what you were pointing out is so beautiful. They asked ChatGPT to write a poem about Biden, and they wrote a mushy, slushy, gunky, made me want to vomit poem. Asked to write about a poem about Trump or DeSantis. Oh, can't do that. It's just like Alexis. When Alexis was asked, what do you think about Jeff Bezos? It said 5 stars, super talented, wonderful. And then they said, what do you think about Jesus Christ? They said, a mythology that happened in Palestine that some people believe, based upon irrational. Like, what?
Yeah.
Think of all the books that have been written about Jesus Christ, okay? And then think about all the books that have been written about Jeff Bezos. I wonder which one is really 5-star. But the point is, it's all lies. It's all going to be delimited by whatever the database is. And right now, Wikipedia is a total left-wing thing, and they change the lies every day to keep up. Like in 1984 and George Orwell, these are the ministries of truth. They change every day. And none of the history books change, but the digital access to that knowledge is going to create the ability to write all our newspaper articles. But let's remember, that's not a big step. They've already been written. They were all written by Avtech. No, what's the name of it? Avid. Avid writes all of the text derived from Thomson Reuters and from the Associated Press. There are no journalists anymore. That's the reason all the big companies are firing people now. Because why? The myth of AI is just like the myth of quantum computing. These are hallucinations of hopeful materialistic scientists who are speculating from a point of view of now of what's going to be. There are no quantum computers. Now, this will take everybody for a shock, okay? I'm sorry, but I'm going to stick my neck out here, and it's the truth. There is no artificial intelligence. Complete BS. There are no quantum computers. Complete BS. CERN has never discovered anything. They've destroyed a bunch of stuff. That's what they do. They destroy stuff. And science, who was it that said science cannot learn anything about the wisdom of the world by killing it? All of our science is analytical. It's killing. And so when we have these digital things, they all are taking the humanness in us into an anti-human world. And one would call that the Antichrist. Well, those are false prophets. So, and then there's the incarnation of materialism in a person called Ahriman. He's probably incarnated right now. And yes, he intends to download his memories into the spiderweb network that we call the web, and Rudolf Steiner called the spider web. And so we do have to be aware of them. We have to be aware of the false prophets, but there are many, many antichrists. But when we come to the Antichrist, when we come to the worst of all the demons, his name is Sorat, S-O-R-A-T, or Sorath with an H at the end. And he is the sun demon. As Christ is the solar logos working through the logos of the seven logoi, or the seven Elohim on the sun. So there's an anti-sun being. And this is the one that is the fourth judgment. There are judgments throughout the entire apocalypse. And when Tyler and I were talking the other day, we both looked at each other, and I think we might have said it at the same time. This is it. The judgment has come. Well, that's true. But how many judgments are there in the apocalypse? Now, first off, let me describe what the apocalypse is. It's an ancient Hebrew tradition and a spiritual tradition of anyone who wishes to go to the seventh heaven. And so Daniel wrote with the same exact images as St. John the Divine wrote in the Apocalypse. You get some of the same images with in the books of Enoch. You get some of the same with the translation of Melchizedek into heaven, Enoch into heaven. You get the same with Tibetan Buddhism with Vajrayogini, translating them to heaven. So you get all those things described. But what we're talking about is the apocalypse means uncovering of the soul to show the spirit. So when John uncovered his soul to bring the revelation of Christ, because that's what that book says it is, he literally uncovered his soul and went to the seventh heaven, just like St. Paul did, and St. Paul described. And there, basically, you either have a feast or you're told to write down a book. And in some cases, you have a feast and then you're told to write down a book. But the point is, you go into the heaven world and you commune with those beings. And we have here descriptions with symbols, and we know what the symbols mean. But if you read this and you don't know what those symbols mean, you can read it 100 times and you will not understand what it is. It is a victory song for those who endure, for those who last, for those who are judged by the four different judgments that happen in the apocalypse and described in Matthew and Thessalonians and many other books. It is a book that talks about the judgment of the righteous and the punishment for the evil. But no one, you can't find an article except ones that I've written, which I am going to do a talk on this, what we call Akashic talk, and it will be in the notes of that. You can't find anybody who talks about the fact that the apocalypse is the greatest victory story ever written. If you endure, and that's all you have to do, if you believe in Christ and you endure the suffering, then you will get the crown of glory, the tree of life, the water of life. You'll get a place in heaven. There are at least 50 promises of what happens to those who are given the raiment, the white raiment, the garment, who those who become the bride of Christ, who those who become divided as the sheep and the goats. If the sheep's really marry the Lamb of God, who is in New Jerusalem. And so we are the bride of Christ. We are also New Jerusalem. So we're building that New Jerusalem. And when you look at the apocalypse, I would love, matter of fact, I probably will do this, to go literally sentence by sentence and point out what they actually mean. There are so many keys to ancient prophecy and to Hebrew and ancient traditions, pre-Christian traditions, pagan traditions that are found in the apocalypse, that if you don't know this, you're not going to understand that the whore of Babylon is alive right now. You call it the cartel of Babylon, which is a great name for her. And she drinks the blood of the saints that have been sacrificed. That's literal, folks. That isn't, they say, oh, that's Rome. That's not Rome. Rome was one incarnation of that. But the Babylonian cartel has had many incarnations, and we have one going on right now. So the apocalypse is a picture of you looking into your own etheric body, which tells you the past, the present, the future, the Alpha and the Omega. It tells you prophecies. But if you don't understand the images, boy, are you going to get confused. Let me just put it simply. There are 4 judgments. The judgment of the church. That's the judgment of your own I am, your own ego. Then there are the seals. And the seals are the astral body of the human being. And so as you are looking at these, you are taming your own astral body. So the judgments given about the churches, those are about you, folks. Those are about your 7 chakras. The 7 churches are your 7 chakras. The judgment and condemnation of the evil of on the seals and what comes from the seals, those are your astral body. And read them. It's personal. And then you go to the next judgment, and that's the judgment of the 7 trumpets, which are also the plagues and many other things. So what happens? That is the judgment of your own etheric body. Every night you go to sleep, you're supposed to be doing this to yourself, passing judgment on your own ego, astral body, etheric body, physical body. And if you do, well, then it's going to go very easily for you, and you will get raptured. And people say rapture is not an apocalypse. Yes, it is. I'll quote it for you in just a minute. It's Christ on a white cloud coming. He takes a big sickle or scythe, and he harvests the good souls so they don't have to go through tribulation. And then he brings them back for 1,000 years of peace. And then he has the big judgment, and then he gives them everything. He gives every single great spiritual promise you can have made to you by God is in the apocalypse for those who are faithful. He gives them a new song. He gives them the eternal gospel. He gives them the raiment of white. All of this. So that's the antidote to these machines trying to eat your humanness. And then the 7 trumpets are, of course, really talking about like the 7 angels and the 7 trumpets and the 7 angels. 7 trumpets are, of course, your etheric body. That's the voice of God. The 7 angels are, of course, the physical body, and those are the vials of wrath. Now, if we were to look at those, every one of them, you would say, is here right now. Every single judgment threat and every evil is here now. It just hasn't completely ended. So for the human being, we are going through an apocalypse right now if you're spiritual. If you're not, then you're just being drugged. Your humanness is being drained from you by Lucifer, by Ahriman, by the Asuras, and by the true Antichrist who is called Sorat. So I think that the apocalypse is the greatest book ever written, and that very few understand it. But one thing's for sure. Right now, if you want to compare our time to the end times and the apocalypse, you would have to say we are certainly in the end times.
Well, that's a lot for me to process while I've been trying to just take all that in, and and for people to understand, when you talk about, for instance, that judgment, that scan of your own self that you do at night, before bed, the importance of self-reflection, and how they're trying to destroy that, and a lot of people not really understanding even how to do that. Doesn't have to be that hard, but things are so fragmented in this technologically destroyed world, where things are, as you said, the scientism is about carving things up. It's about making things smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Their dissection to rule kind of philosophy, that's how people are so fragmented now. And so we sometimes are in simplistic little tidbits of our lives where people just hop from one thing to the next. And what would you suggest as a good way? We're going to go from here into talking more about, how is the Antichrist, within this system. I'd like to cover that in this video in a more specific way, with your knowledge about Scripture and the connection between, yes, it's all fake, yes, it's all constructed as a control mechanism. But it is obviously functioning very well because people are being completely possessed by the dark side, their lives fragmented, their inability to have critical thinking or consistent thinking or consistency or friendships, behavior, all of it, because they're following what their entrainment is telling them to do through these systems. So if you could start with, what would you recommend for people's end of the day self-reflection as a way to help counter this assault, or just a way to count, or a way to analyze themselves and to become holy, be right with what you've been just lying out.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to remember the story of the prodigal son, because really, in the middle of the apocalypse, it has, the woman clothed with the sun, with the moon beneath her feet and the stars above her head, and she births a child who becomes the ruler. Who is that? That's all you. That's all you. But it's a fairy tale version, compacted, of the entire scope of time and the mission of our spiritual development. So right in the middle of it, it's a story within a story, kind of like Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. And so the big picture is there. It means where you came from, how you came down, what happened, and how you're going back. And so it's a complete cosmology. So if you realize that the number one point of the apocalypse is to know that Christ, and let's use the word your higher self, that your higher self is what it is that's supposed to be developed, and that first you need to understand where your higher self came from, what it is, and where it's going. And that requires a cosmology. Well, you can derive a cosmology from just simply reading the book of Revelations of St. John. You can derive it from reading Steiner's Occult Science, occult meaning hidden. You can derive it from a variety of places, but the point is if you just have a pure heart, you really don't need any of that. You just simply have to have a good conscience. If during the day you're doing something bad and your conscience doesn't tell you, and you only remember it because you're reviewing your life, your day, as you're going to sleep, before you go to sleep, that's one point. But if you're doing something wrong and your conscience tells you right then, and you correct it right then, boy, do you save a lot of time and trouble. You mitigate karma instantaneously if you have a full cosmology to understand karma and reincarnation. So if you understand karma and reincarnation, or just simply the logic of doing the golden rule, because that's what karma and reincarnation is, period. It's this simply the application of the golden rule. If you have that, and if you know you have a higher self, but that your higher self can only be attained by selflessness, then that's it. Then what do you put your effort towards? The Buddhists say, I do all of this to attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, not for yourself. If you're doing it for yourself, you're not going to get anywhere. If you're doing it for the sake of everyone else, to get enlightened so you can help them, well, that's the proper motivation. That's the proper desire, one of the few desires. Now, basically, you're working with either the 7 deadly sins, and they are rampant in our age to the point that they are what the materialist worships.
Yes.
The materialist worships the 7 deadly sins, whereas a spiritual person who's already been redeemed, by the way, and people think the rapture means your physical body is going to be taken up. No. When you're spiritual, God's going to harvest you instantaneously. How many times is God going to harvest you? A jillion, as long as you keep doing spiritual stuff. So it doesn't mean that you have to leave. It means you are not subject to the tribulation. So though tribulation is going on all around you, you may be in a paradise because you're a pure and beautiful soul who is trying to develop your higher self for the sake of all sentient beings, to help, or as the Buddha say, you have been the mother of all beings, and all beings have been the mother of you. Now, how much do you love your mother? That's how much you're supposed to love every sentient being. And so the sentient world simulation and the total information awareness that they created, those are Ahrimanic, those are materialistic, AntiChrist views of who you are, so they can get the leverage to steal from you the most precious thing you have, your free will and the love that can flow through you, and the fact that you can have moral thoughts, moral feelings, and moral deeds. That's what digital world hates, because those aren't beings. Those aren't beings in this world. I'm looking at my little computer here. It's not in this world. It is in a sub-world. It is in a world of evil, darkness, cold, dead, evil darkness that mimics a human being. In other words, it's a homunculus. It is a mimic. It is an automaton. It is every evil that a human can become. That's what we're offered right now, because we are in the apocalypse at this point. And so you can ascend. You can be harvested by God in the first judgment, or you can wait around. You can, if you want to go through tribulation, and you want to go through Armageddon, and you want to go through the battle of Christ on the white horse with all of his followers, who he did take up at that point to join this army to fight the battle of Armageddon. You can do that too. You don't have to. If you want to ascend right now, that's it. You can. Because why? That's what the end is about. What are the judgments about the etheric and physical about? Killing the ocean, killing the animals, killing the air, killing everything, killing. 7 killings. In other words, the complete annihilation of the earth as we know it in physical terms will end basically, it will end at the appropriate time, which is approximately 8,000 AD, at which point we will no longer be propagating children the way that we do now. There will be no sexes. There will be no sex to procreate. Procreation will be done out of freedom and wisdom and love. And that's what we're building right now. That's also described here. That's called the New Jerusalem. And what is the New Jerusalem? It's you. Clearly says, New Jerusalem is the bride of the Lamb. And who are we? Our soul is the bride to marry the Lamb. The Lamb is your higher self. It's the Christ. Clearly described in such beautiful terms, but most people become terrified. So in this world right now, if you're becoming terrified that you're going to lose your job, as tens of thousands of people, journalists have lost their job in the last few weeks as Microsoft came out with ChatGPT, which is, of course, a supposed AI. And then there's AI Open. That's who owns the company. But Microsoft got the ability to license it. And so next year, they plan to make $29 billion off of ChatGPT alone. Now, how many people will lose their jobs off of that? So if you're afraid of that, well, there's reason to be afraid. If you're afraid that someone can go in and create a sentient world copy of you and control you, well, you should be afraid of that, because that's true. If you're afraid that they can manipulate you by the images on your screen because they're just Luciferic lies, that's true. If you're afraid of the words that you hear from every single news agency all at once, and they all say the same thing, and you're afraid of that, you should be. Or if you're afraid that your willpower is going to be taken away, and that, as Rudolf Steiner said, that essentially the point of these beings with electromagnetism and all these devices is to simply turn you away from the ability to experience the spirit and to completely evaporate your ability to have free thinking.
Mm-hmm.
clearly predicted this a long time ago, and now it's happened. And in a recent article, I pointed out that Nikola Tesla plans that. He called it the world system. And it's it's an aggressive remote control of all sentient things. And we are getting this close to it. And so what do you get over the fear with? The being who created all of created the whole world, the good natural world. He's so much more powerful than the man-made stuff. The man-made stuff are silly toys. Look at all the civilizations that have come before us. They evaporate, and you don't even know why. We're going to evaporate. The Western civilization is at its end. That's a fact. Now, how long will it take to evaporate? It'll actually take a while, because the vested interests will hang on. And those people who wish to manipulate you and control you so that you can be a consumer that they can manipulate so they can make money for their own 7 deadly sins, their own aggrandizement, that is the evil behind this stuff. And the problem is, and this is, I've never said this, but this is the truth. One of the 7 deadly sins, controlled by a demon called Belphegor. Let's see, how do you spell it? Belphegor, Belphegor, the demon of sloth. Every time you use your phone, every time you use a calculator, every time you use a word processor that says self-correct or spell correct, every time you want to write an article with ChatGPT or anything else,
texting. Texting is the ultimate sloth, in my opinion.
Texting, you are a sloth. You are a lazy person, because you don't know how this works. Did you thank the people who put this together for you so that you could luciferically imagine or harmonically control the world? No, you didn't. That's what you got to do. You got to know that electromagnetism are angels who should have come into this world as our own thoughts, but they fall into electricity and they're bound there. They're put into a prison and made into our slaves. So every time you use electricity, you should be thanking the angels. Every time you see an image, don't thank Lucifer. Thank the angels, and then see the Luciferic in it, and see that Lucifer and Ahriman work together beautifully. When Lucifer tempts you, Ahriman comes in and steals from you as you're not looking. So you can conquer all of this inside of yourself, because every speck of this is in you. Subnature is in you. Are you going to let it rule you? Are you going to let it take over your soul, your thinking, feeling, and willing with these evil thoughts, these evil images, and this, we can call it Satanism, but remember, that's one of the 7 churches. He said that in Smyrna, that Satan was incarnated. And they were such strong believers that they didn't let Satan overwhelm them. So he praised them, and he says, good, but be prepared to go to jail because Satan rules your city and he rules your wealth. Because why? They had too many fine things. And another city, what was their problem? They were lazy. They were lukewarm. And literally, Christ in this tells that church, I'm going to spit you out of my mouth because you're lukewarm, because you haven't committed, because you don't take up the banner. And so these are all the injunctions. I recommend reading with an open, pure heart the book of Revelation, the book of the Apocalypse, and understanding that it is a victory song. It's the eternal gospel. It's the victory of the eternal gospel. There is no higher book, in my opinion, except for the Gospel of John, that can inspire us in our age right now. And in every single judgment that is made of every single bad thing, at the end of the paragraph, it states the redemption for those who persevere. And they're the greatest things you can possibly get. The tree of life, the waters of life, the New Jerusalem, the bride. You get to marry the lamb that has the 7 seals. So remember, the lamb, the 7 seals and the scroll the lamb has, remember, the lamb has as many heads as the beast. Mm-hmm. The line of Judah, has 7 heads and 10 horns. 7 eyes and 10 horns. What are those? Those are the antidote to the beast, to the dragon, 7 heads and 10 horns. So already the victory is claimed. The victory is done. Now, can we mess things up? Yeah, we can mess things up pretty good. Right now, we can accelerate the apocalypse and make it happen now instead of 6,000 years from now. But at the same time, you can accelerate to the end of the apocalypse. You yourself, personally, you absolutely can. And it happens all the time. People literally translate into heaven. It's in all the holy books. It's been witnessed 1,000 times. In Tibetan Buddhism, it's literally part of traditions that if you don't, basically what we call in the West, have spontaneous combustion and just basically evaporate and turn into some dust in your holy robes. If that's it, you can do that
rainbow,
now.
yeah.
Bring it on. It's happening right now. So at the same time I hear all this awful stuff, I also rejoice because it means that the good stuff is coming too.
It's really uplifting. It's so good to hear. And it's so important to hear because there is so much heavy, dark stuff that we're constantly just, and they just, it's so easy to create gross, awful things, and so that's what, there's no end to how much horrors there can be, but the one simple truth of love. And I call it, they have their great reset and I have my daily moment by moment reset, that as many times as you need to in a day, whenever these dark thoughts or demonic interventions try to get in your way, or inside of me, it's that awareness and that reset, and you can do that constantly. You can do it 800 million times a day if you need to, or how many seconds there are in a day. You can do it as often as you need to, and just continuously. For me, I just call on Jesus to, go before me and get behind me, Satan, and in myself, golden rule, come back to that place and just over and over. And the more you do that, the more the practice, you become a practitioner and you're able to much more smoothly go along your days in that golden rule. And so I wanted to urge people to do that. It doesn't have to be that complicated, to be in the good and to be in God. And like you said, we can, that whole, the revelation, the true meaning of the resurrection is right now. And it's really up to us. It's up to us. But they're trying to distract us and bombard us and put things in our body, and mess with our DNA and our smallest parts, our, God's signature of our name, inside of us, put there by God. And they come up with all this stuff. So just as they have chat GDP or GPT, GDP, that'll be next. But they have, they also have this progen or these protein printing machines now, right? Where it's also the same thing that chained chat GPT to create images and words and stories and things, is also a natural language program software that is creating not literal, they're digital proteins that then become real, made into 3D proteins through these same kind of software programs. And they are using artificial, what is just learned intelligence. You just don't even want to call it intelligence. It's a machine that has been able to had input into it to direct it to create new proteins, basically create enzymes that don't exist in nature. And I would put forth that is, of course, demonic. It is, like you said earlier, the cyborgification of humanity, this trying to create human 2.0 by improving, I can't to see where I wrote it down here, but basically they're saying, they want to improve the mutations that they cause, to create to keep changing humans, basically keep changing us so that we are more and more synthetic. And so they can really, the attempt, or in their own philosophy, their transhumanist philosophy, is to attach us to this, this silicon world, this digital system, with our bodies with the same kind of silicon inside of them that there are in LED lights and this kind of thing, the same kind of materials injected into us. And so they're printing those kind of things to be used, they're saying in the near future in these places like Colossal Biosciences, Tierra Biosciences. They put this green mask on of, we're gonna bring back the woolly mammoth, and we're gonna, the dodo bird. I think that one's funny considering that they consider us to be the dodo birds. That they're just gonna club over the head and and make Soylent Green and keep it going. But so they pretend they're creating these lovely new, and we're saving the endangered species, but really they're just cloning and creating chimeras and all of these ungodly creatures, where God always brings the wrath, when you start tampering down at this level of biology. And so I'm just wondering if you could comment on that, and what we kind of started the video with. We'll maybe wrap up here in the next 10 minutes or so about the Antichrist, for the people who don't get it together, and like the people who've taken the jabs and are confronted with this reality, or just the people who are battling with this entrainment, battling with the bioweapon effects of just dealing with the constant fragmentation and synthetic control of their lives, and concerned about what does this mean in the Antichrist system in Scripture, or what they say. They're creating that digital twin system, right? This which is, it's demonic, it's satanic, and it's Satan's attempts to encapture, right, human souls, okay, and to stop them from being saved, okay, and so, and to just feed its own system. But could you talk about what they say about the Antichrist and what I referred to of where the Antichrist, part of this apocalyptic period, or the Antichrist period, is where there is the changing of time, and the changing of time and space, and how that connects into, you said you believe there's nothing, that quantum computing doesn't exist. We have the infinite, where we are infinitely connected constantly, cellularly, heart resonance wise. We are already that, but it's just the fake, like everything else. It's just the fake trying to tap into that, create a synthetic version. And so that's a long way of asking, could you put that into context with what the Bible says about the power of the Antichrist, or the Antichrist system, to affect those parts of our reality? Long question. Oh, I lost your audio. You probably muted because I was babbling on.
Muted at the same time. I'm just too quick. So your question is the question. Is it you, or is it going to be their robotic version of you? Because when they put what's called templated reduced graphene oxide into your body, along with what's called PEG, or polyethylene glycol, the two merge. And because the graphene oxide is templated, it starts to build circuitry in your body. And literally, if it's given enough material, and especially PEG, then it can build synthetic circuits that are neither carbon, which acts like a metal because it's a miraculous substance and it's the opposite of life. Reduced graphene oxide is the opposite of life. Carbon is life. It's the basis of all biological life. And so we created a mimic of it. We created an evil mimic of it. So when it goes into the human body, a strange thing happens. All the blood clots they're pulling out, that's because graphene oxide and PEG get together, and wherever they land, wherever the lipid coating on the outside of the nanotube tells it to go, whether it be your vascular system, your heart, your liver, your testes, your ovaries, your brain, it doesn't matter. They're all coded. And everyone who was given those experimental evil scorpion stings, as I'll call them in the apocalyptic term, those stings actually create an anti-human being inside of you. Now, we already have that on the outside of us. Now it's going on the inside of us. And so these are the evilest substances that ever been created. And yet, and we're at the point of critical mass, not only in pharmacology, but also in the digital world, in war, in politics, falsehood politics, the post-truth age. We are at a point of really being a mess. But if you don't put that stuff in your body, you might be okay. But then you'd say, yes, but graphene oxide dust particles, as well as nanoparticles of aluminum and everything else, every heavy metal, are falling on us and are in our water. They're in our food, and they're in the packaging of the food. Yeah. That is all true. But do I believe that a pure Christian soul can get over that? Yes, I do. I absolutely 100% believe that. And I believe that it's about consciousness. Now, the consciousness is going to keep me from putting that junk in my body. I don't drink city water. I don't eat those kind of foods that are packaged on a mass level. And the more that they are processed, the more graphene oxide they have in them. And so there are these substances, there are these attacks. We could get into all those details. And what you do is you find out that the cleverness of the humans who were possessed by demons, who made these things, are extraordinarily clever, but they're not creative. They're mimicking the human being. And it's a bad mimic. It's not going to work. People are going to simply reject it, exactly like the following. On every street corner is what? The worst poisons you can take. Sugar, pharmaceutical medications, cigarettes, pop, poisonous foods, right? On every street corner. The Antichrist has made sure to put stuff in there for you to kill yourself. Now, I go into a store and guess what? Because I'm gluten-free, dairy-free, and I'm an idiot with food. There's nothing I can eat in there. Not one single thing. Unless they have an aisle for me. And even then, half of that stuff I still can't eat, okay? And I'm certainly not going to drink coffee. It changes your chromosomes from the first second you imbibe it. Same thing with cigarettes. It changes your DNA. So what are we doing now? We're giving medications that rescript your DNA. In other words, CERN tries to be the god of creation. The pharmacy companies try to be the god of healing any illness, when in fact they create just as much illness as they heal. As a matter of fact, the reality is 51% of placebos work. Okay? Placebos are more effective than any medicine for any illness on the face of the earth. Okay? CERN's never discovered a thing about creation. All they discovered is about destruction, and their ideas are so stupid. We simply have to, in the future, personally reject these things. I personally reject the history and history books because now I've done truth history studies. None of that's true. Matter of fact, the more they insist on it, the less likely it's true. Same thing with medicines. The more they tell you it's going to heal you in this new process. For instance, they have a process right now where a doctor takes their little phone here, their little demon phone, and they give you an injection called a hydrogel, and it has 1 trillion reduced graphene oxide sheets that melt as 5G hits it, 4G, 3G, 2G, 1G, doesn't matter. Any electromagnetic frequency heats it up and causes it then to dissolve, melt, and go to whatever place they've been given a fat, a lipid to go and attack. So then the doctor gives you that shot, waits, tells you to come back 24 hours later, takes the phone, puts it next to your arm where they gave you the injection, and moves the substance in the hydrogel to your liver or wherever they want to. These are common therapies. I did an article on this. There's like 100 of these therapies. So anybody who tells you that that isn't going on isn't looking at what people are being charged for their medical treatments for. And none of it is approved by the FDA, the AMA, or anybody else. There is no approval for any use of graphene oxide or polyethylene glycol. Zero. In all studies, it says it's anti-life, it's antibacterial, it's antiviral, it's anti-everything. And it goes beyond the blood-brain barrier and gives you spongiform encephalitis, which they knew when Pirbright Institute created the coronavirus, man-made coronavirus. It slipped over and became mad cow disease. Well, they said, well, this is great. Let's give it to all humans. That's why mad cow disease is happening to humans all over the earth, right? So, but that's okay. This is part of apocalypse. This is one of the things that says, if you're not a good person and if you're not listening to the higher self inside yourself, and you're listening to the propaganda and the narrative, you're going to be tempted. Christ was tempted. We're all tempted. Are you going to go eat the sugar? Are you going to drink a Coca-Cola at the end of every meal? Well, if you do, you're going to get acidosis. And acidosis is the basis of many, many illnesses, including cancer. Even the scientists will tell you that. But the reality is, the end of civilization, Western civilization, is going to be very clear. First, the banks, the corrupt Babylonian banks, will all fall. The pharmaceutical companies will all go bankrupt. And the digital companies will all go bankrupt because people will wake up to the illnesses long after they've been given the illness. For instance, they now admit between 100 to 200 million Americans were given vaccines that gave them either cancer, diabetes, or kidney disease, and a couple others. CDC admits this. So why would anyone be taking those? So that's a temptation of whether you're going to be fearful to the narrative or whether you're going to believe in the victory story of the apocalypse, which is the most beautiful victory story ever written, as far as I'm concerned, because it gives you the heavenly rewards and it spells it all out. And it basically tells you really all you have to do is develop at our age the ability to understand that you had life before birth and there'll be life after death. And people think it's to confront evil. No, it's not. You're supposed to develop a discernment to understand evil. So you can, as Rudolf Steiner says, when you see evil coming down the street, tip your hat and cross over. You don't want to meet these demons. You don't want to meet the demon that is behind Bill Gates. Trust me, you do not. Because what does he tell you? He tells you he wants to kill 5 billion people. Who could ever imagine such a thing in their mind besides a demon? That is not human. And so we get to see a lot of non-human things displayed in the apocalypse, and that apocalypse is happening all around us. But the question is, will you remain human? And where are you going? Into an angel? Or are you being devolved into an animal that is being controlled by subnatural machines that are using forces that are dark forces? You can't see any of them, by the way. They're all invisible. And by beings that you can't see, and beings that can't even come into this realm unless you invite them. Bill Gates has invited Ahriman into his soul, and he no longer has a spirit. He'll be one of those who, after death, there won't be anything after death. And when they come back, Rudolf Steiner described them as slug people. They'll be mushing around in a bunch of mud with no spine, no thinking. And we, who have evolved into angels, are going to have to help those turkey butts. So unfortunately, eventually I'm going to have to, take these nasty words about Bill Gates and lovingly try to help I was going to say man, but he's no longer a man. He's a subhuman. Help that subhuman not devolve into an animal or a plant state or even a mineral state, because that's what some people will become, a dead, cold rock after their death, because they didn't engender any love, any freedom, any virtue, anything that is going to live on. And this is the problem. Your computer's not going to live on, and your memory will be taken away by your computer and by your phone, and your ability to think, and your ability to have free will and love, and even your ability to basically live. Because at this point, Lucifer and Ahriman and the Asuras and Soroth have one mission: to kill you and to take every speck of your energy and turn it, as I invented the phrase, to the dark side with Star Wars. That was my phrase. And that was the deal. Will you be turned to the dark side? Because it's dark. Did you not notice it was dark? Do you not want some light? Well, that's how simple it is. And so I may be glib here by telling you that the way out of the apocalypse is as easy as can possibly be imagined, but it is.
Yeah, well, that's a beautiful way of putting it, how you just did. And it's very inspiring and uplifting. And that's what's needed so much for people to, first of all, wake up, and get less attached to all of these technologies that cause so much harm, and really take our brains away from what's good and what's God. And if we can just close out with this, because I know we're almost at an hour here. And I did want to just jump in here with when you talk about Sorath as the sun demon or the anti-sun. And I think in some circles, like in Nazi circles, they would have called it like the black sun, right? And the that whole kind of Saturn related story there. And this thing around the Saturn being very much also one of these electromagnetically controlled entities over there, according to some studies and people that have done, major works on the rings of Saturn, and they say that the Earth is developing these rings as well. And with the apocalypse or the end times and this, this destruction by fire, but we think of, this. I wonder about this situation with, even with these balloons, right? And this whole discussion coming around the EMPs and these skyships going around. and the conductive substances. Okay, so graphene is the second. Once it turns hot in your body, the heat turns it into graphene dioxide, which makes it do all the things that it does and hooks it up to the 5G and everything. And the only thing more conductive than graphene is helium, right? And so that's why helium in these helium balloons is such a great delivery system for an EMP, which again, when you think of electricity or you think energy or the destructive use of energy, and you think of fire, and it's not necessarily flames, and Japanese wanted to put these balloons over our country, in World War II to just create fires everywhere, right? And that would have been old school. But new school, is this new type of fire, right? And of course, an EMP being kind of this dark sun, this way of just obliteration, and through the destruction of the electronics, all of that, the whole scale just stoppage of these electrical systems. And what I'm trying to get at here is that I think there's a connection here, and these these dry runs for EMPs, especially when we had this one balloon that they let go through the entire country. They let it go over dead center USA, which is where if you were going to do a nuclear detonated EMP, it could do the whole country, is what they've postulated. And so, and it's got the helium, and so an EMP just sends out massive amounts of electrons, right? It's just this enormous amount of electrons. And then we have this generation of these extra electrons in these shots. And by the way, those hypodermic needles you kept saying about the scorpion, and they also were designed, I believe, out of fangs. They were designed from the fangs of snakes, and the microneedle arrays specifically. So down at that micro level of the fluid inside the needle, inside the fang that bites you. But with this EMP situation, I'm wondering if you think there's any correlation there as their preferred end game solution here, and because they're creating, just like they're simulating the world with a digital twin, or attempting to, they're also simulating the apocalypse, right? So it's the foretelling is already there, but they want to hurry it up. They want control of it, and they're always trying to roll it out. And so I'm wondering what you think about my analysis there with the anti-sun and the EMP electron, attack, and what that might have to do with what's foretold.
Yeah, EMPs, very real. They will happen. They should happen. They do happen. And they happen all the time. As a matter of fact, there are warmth critters that get on wire lines. This has even been filmed with infrared photography. That's what takes down most power lines. It isn't the wind. It isn't the lightning. It isn't the rain. They are bursts of plasma balls that are created as an antidote to electromagnetism. Mm-hmm. Electromagnetism will have to end. We cannot, for instance, shall we go to the North Pole, or shall we go to the equator and put up big devices that collect the friction of the atmosphere upon our Earth, which creates the harmonic resonance that keeps our heart beating, called the Schumann wave, which is pervasive throughout the whole cosmos? Oh, that's a good idea. Let's see what happens when we do that. The second that they get the idea, they're going to try it. And so they explode. A lot of the holes in the ozone, those are because of barium bombs that they exploded to see if they could collapse the Van Allen belts, okay? So HAARP super electrifies the ionosphere. Nothing could be worse. That will destroy what they call, it will destroy the ozone, and the ozone keeps out the cosmic radiation that kills us. So EMPs, it'll happen. We'll have to get rid of electromagnetism as we know it as soon as they find what's called electrogravity. It'll be supplanted with machines that will be driven by you can only start them if you have moral force. I've talked about radionics devices. You can't work them if you're not moral, period. A materialist pulls their hair out when they see that a simple, pure person can give them answers that they can't derive from any of their machines. But that's what's going to happen.
It's God's social credit score system.
Exactly. Rudolf Steiner said we should all know the biography of John Worrell Keely better than our own grandfather. John Worrell Keely gave us the secrets to vibration for 0 point energy. He was the first creator of that with vacuums. So with every vacuum and every atom or monad, though there are no atoms, that's actually crystallized thought. And of course, wisdom is crystallized wisdom. So when you're talking about electricity, you're talking about crystallized thought. In other words, angels are thought, and you're crystallizing them, you're killing them. And so we have to stop that because it's ripping everything to pieces. The stuff we can't see, the whole structure, the matrix of the living force, the etheric force of the earth is being completely annihilated. And this is why Christ has returned. Christ's return has already come, which is talked about in the apocalypse. It happens early. It doesn't happen late. And he has already returned. He's in the etheric realm trying to fix that realm, which then will fix the etheric body of all humans. Well, these machines and electromagnetism and all this digital virtual sub-nature, anti-human, anti-life world that kills Christ. It is crucifying Christ in the etheric. He's trying to save the earth and we're trying to destroy it. Trouble is, if you have the cosmology from the apocalypse, in the end, the spiritual people are taken away from here and they go to a different realm. And all the garbage and all the trash is left and everybody evolves. Nobody, remember, death, hell is thrown into the lake of fire in the apocalypse. There is no hell. Hell is temporary. There's no death. Death is a delusion on the part of humans in the material world. Though, and the beast thrown in, the witness, the two-horned beast, the false prophet, the Antichrist, they're all thrown into the fiery pit, fiery lake, and that's where all the people are going who simply go to sleep and become as animalistic as animals, as easy to manipulate and like a plant, and that in fact dumb as a rock. Because really, your intelligence is determined by the calcium carbonate crystals in your pineal gland. And Rudolf Steiner said that in our time, they would inject children directly into that gland so that they would instantaneously, right after birth, have the cleverness of an adult human being. We already do that. Those vaccinations make them lose their childhood and they become clever adults before they're even 3 years old. Everything Steiner had predicted for our time has come to pass. But the great news is the antidotes are straightforward and simple. And every person already has all the antidotes in their heart. The blood of Christ is in their heart. Everyone has the antidote. And if you put Christ on the throne of your heart, that's really all it takes. And then when you need to go to heaven to see Christ on the throne or see the Almighty God on the throne, as the apocalypse says, you don't have to go far. You just have to go to your heart.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's actually a really great wrap up. That was so beautifully said. It makes me, I can feel that. And when you can really feel words and they bring you joy inside where your body just lights up, then you know there's truth there. And you said it so well, just that all we have to do is be in that space of understanding what we already are. And that fear is the number one control mechanism. And there's nothing to be afraid of at the end of the day. And suffering is optional. It doesn't mean pain doesn't hurt. Okay. But it means that we understand that there's continued existence. Okay. The true meaning of the resurrection can live in your everyday life and help rid you of fear, help you cross that street away from Satan. Doesn't mean you don't have to charge those gates sometimes, because we are confronted, and you have to stand strong and not be afraid. As you did in Star Wars there, Douglas, right? The Force and Obi-Wan when he gives it a go there. I know wasn't your exact story, but what I'm saying is, sometimes sacrifice is very important.
No, Obi-Wan was mine.
Oh, Obi-Wan was yours. Okay. A lot of people don't understand that Douglas here is behind the stories from the Star Wars.
The little green dude, what's his name?
Yoda.
Yoda was supposed to be, he was nothing. He wasn't a teacher. He was a comic interlude when they went to the planet for Obi-Wan to train Luke. So yeah, it's in that movie because why? Your dad is Ahriman and he's going to cut your hand off. Okay. And what are you looking for? What you're really looking for is the happiness of your twin. That's what Leia was supposed to be. That's his spiritual self, right? So it was her happiness, but they really messed it up after that, because she was supposed to go to the world tree and bring about wisdom and teach them how to defend themselves without hurting anybody, unless you get back what you send. So if someone sends it to you, you send it back to them. It's natural. Yeah. So to begin with, if they turned Star Wars into it, it would have been basically the same story you would find in St. John's Book of Revelation.
Wonderful, wonderful. I wish I could see that version.
I've been thinking about writing it up again, because
you should. That would be amazing.
I put a lot.
Giant fan. People need it. They need it. They need the inspiration and the unfragmented version. The unocculted version is what we need. We need to shine the light and let people bear witness and be given the chance to actually step into that light, unshielded, because all of the secrecy and these hidden components have really brought us to here, right? And we're looking for awareness and waking up, and humanity is waking up so enormously. They're able to take in much more than they realize. And it's like you said, because there's Christ, repairing the etheric realm. And I think that's a really important point that you said, because I think that has so much to do with helping people, how they could understand why humanity is awakening, during this time. And that correlation for me was huge in what you spoke about today. So I thank you so much for that.
Oh, I thank you for listening and for inviting me to come on your show. I just love talking with you, chatting with you. And they turned out to be some of the best shows that we do. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Douglas. And folks, you can go ahead and read Douglas's work on at Gabriel's Horn _horn at Gab, which I'll put the ticker here, and also at ourspirit.com, and read their articles. You and your beautiful wife, as you describe her, Hyla, and they do a great job, just high thinking. And if you want to feel uplifted and also go deep into some of these spiritual principles. So thank you again, Douglas. I'm really looking forward to next time. And I'm sure soon we'll be back up for the episode 5 of Cartel of Babylon series soon. So everybody look forward to that. Okay.
I can't wait.
Oh, me too. Me too. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait too.
Well, we love you. Thank you.
Yeah, I love you too.
Thank you for helping us stay free.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, everyone, you are free. That's it. So don't forget that. Don't forget that in the reset. You can do that every minute, every second. And I'll see you next time. And that's it, folks. You are free. Bye, Douglas.
Bye-bye.